Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Certain universities are requiring students to be boosted and masked up this fall. We hear from the Justice Centre, which is suing those post-secondaries about their mandates. More doctors are on their way to Lethbridge to help alleviate the physician shortage in our city. Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf has the details. And the widow of the late NBA star Kobe Bryant was awarded $16 million by a jury on Thursday. We will explain why.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. As students and teachers prepare to return to class this fall, there's another university which is requiring staff, faculty, and students to mask up and receive at least one booster of the COVID-19 vaccine. That post-secondary institution is Western University in London, Ontario. Officials say even though it is no longer a provincial mandate in Ontario, they say the measures are aimed at preserving the in-person learning experience to protect those from getting COVID-19. The updated policy requires everyone to provide proof of vaccination to the university by October the 1st. Masks will be in effect on September the 1st. Now, Western is not the only school requiring a COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Seneca College in Toronto was one of the first to require one. The Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms is fighting on behalf of students to have mandates dropped at colleges and universities. John Carpe is the president of the Justice Centre, and he says vaccine mandates are unconstitutional, and they've taken a number of post-secondaries to court fighting those mandates.
Last year was 2 shots, and now they're actually pressuring young, healthy adults who are not threatened by COVID to get a booster shot, like a 3rd shot. And this is just absolutely outrageous because the vaccine manufacturers have said publicly that the vaccine does not stop the spread. So it should just be a personal decision. And there's more and more evidence is coming out about the harmful effects of vaccines, such as myocarditis. If you're a healthy 20-year-old, your risk of harm from the vaccine could be higher than your risk from COVID, but that's a decision that every individual should make for him or herself.
Now, as for the University of Lethbridge, Associate Professor and Canada Research Chair Dr. Tushar Patel says they do not have a boosting or mask mandate this fall, but will continue to be mask-friendly.
We are going to provide masks, and there are many mask and hand sanitizing stations across the campus, as we have done over the last year as well. So if students, faculty, colleagues, if they would like to use mask, they forget to bring it from home, we will provide them masks every day. We also have implemented enhanced air circulation systems. So the plan is, as we did last fall, to bring out more of the fresh air from outside with enhanced filtration devices, and we will circulate more of the outside air to indoor classroom spaces. So that is one of the other safety measures that we have implemented on campus.
Dr. Patel says the U of L will also continue to offer free rapid antigen tests on campus for anyone who needs one. Now, as for Lethbridge College, officials there say masks will be mandatory during some interactions at the Wellness Centre, including all visits with on-campus physicians. The Friends of Chinook Regional Hospital in Lethbridge, along with AHS, have awarded 4 volunteers with Healthcare Professionals of Tomorrow scholarships. The scholarships are given out each and every year. They're geared towards younger volunteers at the hospital who are in high school or university.
Some people are undecided on what they want to do and what career avenue they want to take. And we have these scholarships to healthcare workers. So healthcare worker doesn't have to be a physician, doesn't have to be a nurse. It could be somebody that's just going to be in healthcare, right? So whether it be an X-ray tech or something like that. So, but getting them involved and being able to be firsthand of how the hospital runs and really getting experience with patients. I think it's really pivotal in how they shape which avenue they're going to go in on their career.
Erickson says the money from the scholarships will go towards helping to further the students' education in the healthcare sector. It appears as though more family physicians are on their way to our city. Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf says this should help alleviate the need for some who are in dire need of a doctor.
To date, there have been 17 family physicians hired to come to Lethbridge and serve. 4 of them have commenced the first part of that assessment and transition. It is estimated that they will be starting this fall, those 4, and with the further 13 beginning to come online closer towards the end of the year and into next spring. So 17 would roughly cut that number of people without family doctors in half. So we're not all the way there, but we have definitely turned a corner and we're moving in a very positive direction.
UCP Caucus Chair and Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf will also discuss how the province is working to address the labour shortage in a number of other sectors. That's coming up after Business News. New data from Stats Canada says Albertans are falling further behind as wages are failing to keep pace with inflation. Calgary-Buffalo NDP MLA Joe Ceci says things need to really change here in our province.
The inflation rate for June was 8.4%. Meanwhile, wages only increased by 3.3%. That means Albertans effectively took a 5% pay cut. And to make matters worse, wage growth in Alberta was below the national average, and inflation is above the national average. In fact, since the beginning of the pandemic, Alberta has had the slowest wage growth in the country. Meanwhile, the cost of housing, utilities, gas, and groceries have all skyrocketed. As a result, Albertans are struggling to make ends meet.
The NDP says the struggles for Albertans comes at a time when the UCP is expected to unveil a huge surplus in next week's first quarter update as oil hovers around $100 a barrel. The number of job vacancies reached a new high in June as employers were looking to fill more than 1 million positions for the third straight month. Stats Canada says the vacancy rate was 5.9% in June. The agency says there were close to 150,000 vacant jobs last month in healthcare and social assistance sectors. Job vacancies in the food services and accommodation sectors were also up in June compared to the month before. The federal government is putting $60 million in 17 organizations across the country to help people with learning disabilities stay in the workforce. Employment Minister Carla Qualtrough says the funds will be distributed through the Skills for Success program. It helps those who have challenges with reading and writing.
These are skills that everyone needs to succeed at work, but not everybody has. So, reading, writing, numeracy, digital technology, communication, problem solving, these foundational skills that we all benefit from and that some workers don't have yet, but certainly we want to build them in people. And these skills are so important when you consider how quickly the nature of work is changing. Our country is having to deal with demographic changes, new technologies, different work practices, on-demand work, part-time work. This is all disrupting the way that we have historically worked as our country with new sectors, green technologies growing rapidly, the ways we work and, the ways we go to work and the way we do things. Everything is changing so quickly, and COVID has, quite frankly, just accelerated this.
Minister Qualtrough says this new program will also help underrepresented groups in the workforce, including Indigenous peoples and racialized Canadians. Well, it was a soggy one at Whoop Up Days here in Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is in now with a quick peek at the weather forecast, and she joins us from Exhibition Park. Jeanette, did the rain hold off long enough for you to maybe enjoy a mini donut or some cotton candy?
It sure did, Hal, and we will bring you back some donuts too, don't you worry. But we are looking at some more showers expected this evening and some thunderstorms as well. Some fog patches developing after midnight. Now, Friday was supposed to be our sunny day. Not so much anymore. We're looking at a 60% chance of showers. Could see some afternoon thunderstorms. As for Saturday and beyond, that's where it's going to get nice and warm and toasty again. Lots of sunshine expected as well. I'll have that 7-day forecast coming up for you later on in the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Love those mini donuts. Overseas, Ukrainian military officials say Russian forces launched a rocket attack on a train station, killing at least 25 people.
Прилетіло і грохнуло. Ми нічого не поняли. От я зовсім нічого не зрозуміла, що було, що случилось, чому. Бо все заволокло пилью, така як пильова буря. Нічого не видно, не знаємо, куди біжати.
Several hundred people gathered on Parliament Hill on Wednesday to celebrate the 31st anniversary of Ukraine's independence from the Soviet Union. Many wore blue and yellow or traditional clothing to mark the occasion.
Like many of you, the last 6 months have felt like 6 years. Many sleepless nights worrying about friends, family, and the feeling that we're not doing enough to help the people of Ukraine. But every day, we wake up and we do everything we can. Eat, sleep, Ukraine, repeat. Because today marks 182 days of Vladimir Putin's 3-day war, and the Ukrainian army is just getting started. And Vladimir Putin remains a master strategist.
A rally was also held in Lethbridge on Wednesday to acknowledge that very special day for Ukrainians. Wednesday was Ukraine's Independence Day. Now, the nonprofit group Project Sunflower hosted the very special event. As BCN's Micah Quinn explains, a flag was raised at Lethbridge City Hall to show solidarity with Ukraine in its war with Russia.
The Ukrainian flag is now flying high for all to see at City Hall. A large group of supporters looked on as the flag was raised. Residents came out to show unity for Ukrainian Independence Day on August 24th. In 1991, Ukraine issued a Declaration of Independence to separate from the Soviet Union. Later that year, Ukrainians voted to become an independent country and move away from Soviet rule. It's also been 6 months since Russia invaded Ukraine, and the ill effects of the war are still being felt everywhere, including right here in Lethbridge. Devin Hargreaves and Anastasia Sereda from the Ukrainian assistance group Project Sunflower were happy to see so many people come down for the rally.
By flying this flag here, we hope that it sends a message that Lethbridge, as part of Alberta and part of Canada, completely stands behind Ukraine and supports it.
So far, Project Sunflower has helped assist over 70 families to come to Lethbridge and southern Alberta. The group focuses on fundraising, housing, and identifying potential employment opportunities for new Ukrainians.
Things have slowed down a little bit for the summer. We do anticipate that likely to pick up probably come fall or winter. So I would encourage anyone that would consider opening their hearts and their home to individual or individuals from Ukraine to go to www.projectsunflower.ca and get that process started, and if that need were to arise, we can have that ready to go. The amount of support and people who have opened their homes so far has blown us away. It's been outstanding, and we're very touched by the Lethbridge community.
This is also the first rally for the organization since several newcomers from Ukraine have settled into Lethbridge.
So I think that it also must be very touching for them to see that the Lethbridge community supports them.
The Ukrainian flag will fly at Lethbridge City Hall for a total of 1 week. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
For the first time in almost a decade, Whoop Up Days here in Lethbridge will feature a pro rodeo. The special event will be taking place over the next few days. Some well-known riders will be at the rodeo. The CEO of Lethbridge and District Exhibition, Mike Workington, says it wasn't an easy process getting the rodeo here back into the Windy City.
It's been an interesting conversation. It's probably been going on for almost 4 years at this point in time of how we get pro rodeo back here in a way that makes sense, that we can grow it into the future, and it can be a core staple of our event programming. Our board committed to rodeo. Our team has committed to rodeo. We have great partners in the Rocky Mountain Turf Club and a long list of sponsors who have helped us to make that rodeo a success this year. And we are ready to burst down the doors and let people in for tonight's perf.
The first rodeo takes place tonight until Saturday at the Rocky Mountain Turf Club. Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services were called to a residential house fire on the west side Wednesday evening. Crews from 3 of the Lethbridge stations arrived and were able to put out the blaze that engulfed the lower basement suite of a house in the 100 block of Laval Boulevard. Fortunately, no one was hurt and the residents of the house were able to get out before fire crews arrived. The damage is estimated at $275,000 and the cause of the blaze is still under investigation. The Avali School District's Embattled police chief has been fired. This follows allegations that Pete Arredondo made a number of critical mistakes during a mass shooting that left 19 students and 2 teachers dead. The firing was little consolation for the parents who lost their children back in May.
Our babies are dead, our teachers are dead, our parents are dead. The least y'all can do is show us the respect to do this in the public.
If it was one of your children, heads would be rolling right now. But because it's not, you don't care.
A federal jury has awarded the widow of Kobe Bryant $16 million over photos of the NBA star's body at the site of the 2020 helicopter crash that claimed his life, his daughter's life, and the lives of 7 other people. Following an investigation, it was determined that the crash was pilot error. Later on Instagram, Bryant posted a photo of her with her husband and Gianna writing, "All for you, I love you, justice for Kobe and Gigi." Whoop Up Days continues at Exhibition Park. Lots of rides, food, the rodeo as you saw, games and exhibitors. And while you're there, you may also see this cute little guy, Twiggy the water skiing squirrel. The Animal Novelty Act has been around since 1979, with Chuck and Luann Best featuring the original Twiggy on the show Real People. Twiggy has been featured on numerous television shows, newspaper articles, and websites. You can also see Twiggy at Whoop Up Days in Lethbridge until Saturday. You know that Twiggy's a better water skier than I am. Well, we had more rain here in many parts of southwestern Alberta again today, and the moisture was welcomed by many of our farmers and ranchers. Will it continue? Full weather details are coming up. Well, we had showers off and on for most of the day here in Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is now with a full look at the weather picture. And she joins us once again from Whoop Up Days at Exhibition Park. Jeanette, we may see a bit of a break from the moisture for a day or so?
Well, maybe little intermittent breaks between the showers over the next day, because we are still expecting showers on Friday with the risk of a thunderstorm. But beginning on Saturday, that's when we can see sunshine for most of next week. Tonight, a 60% chance of showers with a risk of a thunderstorm. Overnight low of 10 degrees. Friday, 30% chance of showers and risk of a thunderstorm in the afternoon, high of 25. Saturday, sunshine and 27 the high. 26 on Sunday under sunny skies. Sunshine Monday with a high of 27. The temperature is going to jump all the way up to 33 on Tuesday under sunny skies. And look at that temperature for Wednesday, high of 35 degrees with sunny skies. According to the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 24 and the average low 9 degrees. The record for the highest temperature on this day, set back in 1996, was at 35 degrees, and the lowest temperature recorded was -1 back in 1992. The sun rose at 6:36 a.m. and sunset is expected at 8:30 p.m., giving us 13 hours and 54 minutes of daylight. We're now under 14 hours. Looking at tomorrow's highs across the nation, Victoria's high 19 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. 30% chance of showers expected in Vancouver with a high of 22. Edmonton expects sunshine, then becoming a mix of sun and cloud in the afternoon, high 30 with a humidex of 32. Calgary, 30% chance of showers is expected with thunderstorms in the afternoon, high of 27. Saskatoon, 30% chance of showers, thunderstorms in the afternoon as well, high of 28 there. Regina, sunny with fog patches dissipating in the morning, high 26, winds at 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Winnipeg, sunshine with 20 winds and 28 degrees. In Toronto, 30% chance of showers in the afternoon and a high of 27 degrees and winds at 20 kilometers per hour. Ottawa, 40% chance of showers in the afternoon with a risk of a thunderstorm, high 23. In Montreal, showers and 23 degrees. Over in Atlantic Canada, 23 the high in Fredericton with rain. Halifax could see a 30% chance of showers, high 27, except along the coast, only 19 degrees. Charlottetown expects 60% chance of showers with the risk of a thunderstorm, high 24. And a 40% chance of showers is expected in St. John's, Newfoundland with a high of 25 degrees. And that's a look at your forecast from across the nation from here at the Whoop Up Days Festival in Lethbridge.
Stats Canada says the number of job vacancies increased for a third straight month in June to a record of just under 1,039,000. That is up 3.2% from May. The agency says the job vacancy rate in June also increased from 4.9 to 5.9% year over year. Stats Can says the biggest jump in job vacancies came in healthcare and the social assistance sector, which were up 40.8% from June of last year. Rogers Communications says the cost of splitting its wireless and wireline networks following the widespread outage last month has risen from $250 to $261 million. It says it does not have the necessary data to determine the exact economic impact caused by the disruption on July the 8th. The comments are included in a requested report by the CRTC that provides more information on the outage that impacted millions of Canadians. The length of time it will take to separate the networks as redacted in the letter dated August 22nd, along with other details on the measure. CIBC and TD Bank are the latest big banks to report a drop in third quarter net income as they increase provisions for potentially bad loans. TD says its profits fell from $3.55 to $3.21 billion in the same quarter last year. Revenue, meanwhile, increased from $10.71 to $10.93 billion. CIBC says its net income fell 3.5% from a year earlier to $1.67 billion. Revenue increased 10% to $5.57 billion. All of the banks have added to their loan buffers as the economic outlook worsened on higher central bank interest rates meant to slow inflation. The chairman behind a large green hydrogen project in Atlantic Canada says it is feasible to begin exporting small shipments of Canadian-made hydrogen to Europe within the next 3 years. But World Energy G2 Consortium Director John Risley says it will only happen if everyone involved moves quickly. He made the comments after Canada and Germany signed an agreement aimed at setting up a transatlantic trade in the renewable energy sector. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 150 points on the day to finish at 20,172. The Dow was up 322 points to 33,291. The S&P 500 was up 58 points to 4199, and the Nasdaq was up 207 on the day to 12,639. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 237 to 92.52 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 4 cents to 9.38 US. Gold was down 9 cents to 17.5862 US an ounce, and silver was up a cent to 19.26 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $10.75 per bushel, barley's at $7.95, canola's at $20.30, and corn is at $11.25 per bushel. Live cattle were down 23 cents to $141.10, feeder cattle were up 65 cents to $181.88, and lean hogs were up 73 cents to $91.10. That's the October contract. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 77.34 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the number of job vacancies reached a new high in June as employers were looking to fill more than 1 million positions for the third straight month. Stats Canada says the vacancy rate was 5.9% in June. The agency says there were close to 150,000 vacant jobs last month in the healthcare and social assistance sectors. More doctors are on their way to Lethbridge fairly soon. That's according to UCP Caucus Chair and Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf. We'll have more details for us in just a moment. And listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Discover homegrown produce and homemade products at the Downtown Farmers Market at Festival Square in Lethbridge. Every Wednesday beginning at 9 a.m. until September 4th, you'll find over 15 local vendors selling fresh fruit and vegetables, delicious baked goods, homemade soaps, and so much more. Enjoy the relaxing atmosphere and support local producers and artisans at the same time. Go back in time and see what it was like to live as a pioneer. Coyote Flats Pioneer Village is a Western heritage museum located 1.5 kilometers south of Pitcher Butte. Walk through the village and see a railway station, post office, fire hall, school, and so much more. The museum is open daily from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. with admission of $10 for adults or $20 per family. For more information, visit coyoteflats.org. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
The UCP will be choosing its new leader on October the 6th. Many are still on the campaign trail trying to drum up a little bit of support. We recently saw leadership hopeful Travis Taves at the Whoop Up Days parade. Now, another politician who was also at the parade was Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf, who joins us now from his home riding in his office here in Lethbridge. Nathan, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Great to be here, Hal. Thank you.
Now, you were part of the parade. Did you see all the thousands of people lining up the streets? It was an incredible turnout, wasn't it?
It was great. It was just great to see people back after a couple of years away because of the pandemic, the excitement. little dicey on the weather that morning, but it turned out to be just a beautiful day, not too hot and no rain, and just a lot of people happy to be out and waving flags and seeing candy coming their way. It was really great.
Now, you're in Lethbridge right now, but you're also headed down to what, Madison, Wisconsin? What's the purpose of the trip?
That's right. Yeah, I'm going to Madison, Wisconsin as a representative for Alberta to take legislative leadership development at their Bohé Institute. And very happy to do that. There's a lot that we need to learn as legislators. This is one of the top programs in North America for developing legislators. And I'm very happy to be selected to go to this course for a week. It's going to be a full week, but really happy to learn more to serve my community and my province well.
Now, Nathan, let's chit-chat a bit about the leadership race. It's heating up once again. Many would argue that at this point, it's really a two-horse race between former Finance Minister Travis Toews and former Wildrose Party leader Danielle Smith. Now, you threw your support behind Smith. Why is that?
Well, quite simply, Hal, it's because she listens. And I believe she has a very strong focus on grassroots development, which will allow me as the representative for Lethbridge East to share the top concerns for Lethbridge more fully. I think that's what people expect. Not that I agree with every one of her policies, but I do believe that she will listen and allow me to strongly take Lethbridge positions to government and make sure that our interests are well represented there.
Some of the items Danielle Smith is campaigning on and bringing forth is the Alberta Sovereignty Act. Where do you stand on that, Nathan?
I'm actually very strongly in support of it, but I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about it. The Sovereignty Act isn't just to say no to Ottawa. What it's meant to do is protect the jurisdictional authority of Alberta. The Canadian Constitution is very clear that there are certain authorities given to the federal government and certain authorities given to the provincial government. We want to protect Alberta's provincial authority. And when Ottawa veers too far into that lane, be able to legally tell them, no, you've crossed the line. And instead of us always having to take the federal government to court when they do that, we would now have the ability to say, this crosses that jurisdictional authority protected by the Canadian Constitution, and we're not going to observe that. And I have lots of instances where the federal government has done that in recent times.
So how will that work in regards to Bill C-69, or as Jason Kenney referred to, the No More Pipelines Act?
Exactly. That would give us, instead of us having to take them to court, which we have, we won in Alberta. Now the federal government has taken it to the higher Supreme Court. Yeah. The tables would be turned. We would have the authority to say, under the Constitution, this is our jurisdiction. And no, we are going to go in this direction as is protected by the Canadian Constitution. If the federal government didn't like that, then they would have to take the province to court. And that would cost them money. Then they would have to defend their claims properly in the proper court of the land. So I think that needs to be more clearly understood. I've always been a strong supporter of local autonomy, and this, I believe, would further strengthen that.
What's interesting about all of this, taking, one government taking another government to court, it's all taxpayers' money at the end of the day. So taxpayers are saying, no, come on, let's figure this out. Nathan, a number of Conservatives I've chatted with are quite concerned that the UCP is not quite united anymore. What will it take to really unite the party once again?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One is we do need to have resolution on leadership. Right now, there are 8 competing voices for that spot, including our current premier and the work that he's trying to do. And 2, we need to take some time to sit down and work through those differences. I'm proud of our caucus, that we have a great breadth and diversity of viewpoints, that we have strong individuals all across the province bringing their voices to bear on issues that matter to them. Now we have to have the time to sit down under one united leader to have those conversations and work through it. We're adults. We know that we don't get everything we ask for, but we do expect to be respected, listened to, so we can bring those concerns forward, and then hopefully we can find a path that has consensus and majority. I believe we can get there, and we need a little bit of time to do that.
One of the stories we recently had on Bridge City News was how UCP leadership candidate Leela Aheer's social media accounts were hacked into. The hackers posted a lot of objectionable material that has simply devastated MLA Aheer. Have you had a chance to chat with her?
I did. I reached out to her this morning, talked with her a little bit through text, actually. She's devastated. It's horrible. It's disgusting what's happened to her. Unfortunately, it happens to too many elected leaders around the world. It needs to stop. I fully stand with her and hope that the RCMP can find out who's responsible for this and prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law.
Now, Nathan, last time we chatted, you mentioned that the province had a plan to bring more doctors to our city. I mean, 40,000 people in Lethbridge, including myself, still don't have a family physician. My doctor bailed and he went to the Netherlands. What's the latest with more doctors joining us here in the Windy City?
Well, we have very good news. To date, there have been 17 family physicians hired to come to Lethbridge and serve. 4 of them have commenced the first part of that assessment and transition. It is estimated that they will be starting this fall. Those 4, and with the further 13 beginning to come online closer towards the end of the year and into next spring. So 17 would roughly cut that number of people without family doctors in half. So we're not all the way there, but we have definitely turned a corner and we're moving in a very positive direction. We hope to continue to add roughly 2 physicians a month in that process. That would mean by hopefully next summer, we're back very close to a full complement of doctors needed in this area.
A surgeon I was chatting with recently also said that in the next little while, we'll be down to 2 gynecologists. A couple are apparently moving and other ones are retiring. That's yet another void that we have to fill here in the city.
Yeah, and that's a problem not just here in Lethbridge. There are problems amongst a number of disciplines in Alberta and right across Canada. And I think we need to take a much more global perspective on that. We need to be training more physicians here locally, not just Alberta, but in Canada. We have been importing doctors for many years, but I think now we need to turn our attention towards the next generation, some terrific youth who want to serve and practice all kinds of areas in medicine and other areas, to tell you the truth as well. And we need to make that more available and accessible to them so that we can keep them here, right where they want to grow up and live and raise their families.
Now, a number of municipalities, including here in Lethbridge, have really voiced their concerns about EMS dispatch being centralized. The province said they wanted to do so in an effort to save millions of dollars, I think around $6 million annually. A number of mayors are saying it's taking ambulances far too long to reach patients. And Nathan, as you know, time is of the essence in critical situations. Is your government looking at potentially giving the power back to municipalities?
I believe they are. They assemble what we call the Alberta EMS Provincial Advisory Committee. RJ Sigurdsson and Tracy Allard and a number of MLAs, Tanya Yao, worked on that committee, and they have brought forward recommendations to help address that. Some of it's increased funding, some of it's other measures. They're working on implementing that now. There is a strong commitment to look at that system and see how we can best manage some of these challenges, like long wait times, like ambulances being trapped in other jurisdictions as they do transfers of patients. So that's a very key file right now, and they've been working on it. They submitted recommendations. I look forward to more announcements in the months and weeks ahead.
Now, there's a push within your party to have a provincial police force. Many Albertans I've chatted with say they're quite happy with the job that the RCMP is doing right now, and implementing a new police force would be far too costly and not even as effective. Where do you stand on the issue?
Well, I do like the idea of an Alberta police force, but you're right. We need to work more closely with municipalities on what that looks like, what that will cost, who bears those costs. The province is committed to bear any additional costs. And to be perfectly clear, this has never been a question about the men and women who serve on the front lines of RCMP. This is about administration. This is about authority. This is about community policing having to go through a provincial director to a national director and back in terms of getting things done. I think provinces across Canada like to make sure that leadership line is much shorter and much closer to the ground where the boots are needed. But this transition will take time, and it will take dollars, and it will take cooperation of the province and municipalities to make that happen. But the community policing portion would be much more responsive, in my opinion, if it was governed more locally and provincially.
Driving around the city, you and I have both seen a lot of the tent encampments set up by the Civic Center, by the Soup Kitchen and so forth. We still have an opioid crisis here, a homeless issue. How is the province really working with the city to address a lot of those problems here in Lethbridge?
We have a number of great initiatives. The municipality and police force have recently helped address that. Those tent cities have really reduced in size recently. But you're right, it's an ongoing issue of mental health and addictions issue, and homelessness. We just announced 64 new beds for supportive seniors housing, which creates spots in other areas of the system to intake other individuals. We have a number of long-term beds here in Lethbridge and on the Blood Tribe that will be coming into service this fall. That will again help them. And talking to the mayor recently, he said a number of those individuals living in the tent city actually have houses and accommodations in other places. They just don't have easy access back to them. So we're working with the city to see if we can come up with a more regular, low cost or zero cost transportation system to help them get back to the homes that they actually have.
Premier Jason Kenney has pushed for an Alberta pension plan. Now, Rachel Notley and the NDP have been quite vocal, saying that they will not touch our Canada pension plan. What would be the benefit of a provincial as opposed to a federal plan, in your opinion?
It's my understanding that the savings to Alberta workers and Alberta businesses would be in the magnitude of $3 to $6 billion a year, partly because Alberta is a growing workforce, a growing economy. We have younger workers that generally get paid higher wages. So this means we're spending billions of dollars supporting other jurisdictions across the country for their retirement, not ours. If we repatriate that, that's a lot of dollars back in Albertan taxpayers' pockets and Alberta company pockets. That allows them to diversify their businesses as well as save money. We think this would be beneficial. This is something that we do want to work on. Obviously, as we just talked, those saved dollars could help Alberta pay for a police force, for instance, which we know would have additional costs. There's all kinds of things that we could do if we brought that back. I think it's something that Albertans need to consider, and I think it's something that we'll be discussing more and more as we move into the future.
Nathan, many business owners we've chatted with on Bridge City News are saying they don't have enough staff. They can't attract enough workers to come to Lethbridge. What is the province doing to really address the worker shortage?
Well, Premier Kenney just announced a across Canada invitation for particularly people who may be living in Vancouver and Toronto, but other areas to consider Alberta. We have lower cost of housing. We have great wages, great jobs. We have a beautiful province. From south to north, there's incredible places to recreate and enjoy our vast wildlife and nature. So we are trying to do that. We do that on an international basis as well. But I think we will also have to, like I said earlier, expand those training spots in our post-secondary institutions so that people are coming here from all across Canada, all across North America, and indeed around the world to come here to train and fall in love with our province. Then they'll end up staying.
They'll also fall in love with Waterton Lakes National Park. I go there every second weekend. Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf, thanks so much for your time today.
You bet. Thank you, Hal. Appreciate it.
Well, we've all heard of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, which most of us likely associate with combat veterans. But today's guest says that first responders are also at a high risk of PTSD. Norm Welsh joins us from the San Francisco Bay Area. He was a police officer for 25 years, part of which he was an undercover narcotic agent. But after a series of difficult life events, ended up in federal prison, where he, interestingly enough, studied to earn a doctorate in Christian counseling. Norm is the author of Christ-Centered Healing of Trauma, Healing a Broken Heart. Norm, welcome to Bridge City News and Miracle Channel. So great to have you on today.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Oh, great. Well, Norm, okay, so you have quite a story to tell here. So can you maybe give our viewers a brief snapshot of your life story, of the events that led up to writing this book?
Oh gosh, it's a long story, but I'm going to try to make it short. As a police officer, as all police officers throughout the whole world experience many traumas. I mean, everything from horrific suicides to children's death and horrible accidents and murders. It's just, sometimes it's overwhelming. And I grew up in a middle class neighborhood, and I never really experienced death, and that was my first bout with death, and it was difficult for me. Yet my father was in the military, and he always taught me to just push down your emotions, right? Just to keep them down and move forward. Men don't cry. just go to the next thing. And that's what the police academy taught too. And like my first serious call, which was about a couple months in, was an airplane crash. It crashed right into a shopping mall through the ceiling, and it was on December 23rd. And it was 50 yards away from where Santa was talking to the children.
Oh my
gosh. And there was 14 deaths and 88 injured. It was a horrific scene. And so police, and I'm not trying to say I experienced all this. This is what police officers experience every day.
Yeah.
And unless we're really prepared for it, it can really have a negative effect on our lives, because they want us to just move forward. So after you leave that plane crash, you go right to another call. Maybe it's a residential burglary, and you have to be nice to the people. And after all these things you just saw, and
wow,
I did it well. I don't know why I did it well, but it wasn't until about 14, 15 years later when it all came bubbling out.
I'm surprised it took that long. That's crazy, because you don't have time to even process anything.
No, you don't. And now I understand police departments are doing a lot more to help this. In other words, once you experience a traumatic event, they kind of do a debriefing and stuff. But back old school, no, you just went from one call to another, and your sergeant was there to say, hey, you just got to go to the next call, because we just don't have anybody else to do it. And I believe now that it's changing, but it's a slow change. I still talk to some of the guys that are working, and they say it's still not happening. But more and more departments are getting chaplains, which is great. I think a chaplain in each police department, fire department, hospital, any first responder agency is going to help them process these things they see.
Okay, so you had PTSD, and at some point you became addicted to prescription pain medication, right? Because of
Yeah, as soon as I left the police department, went to state narcotics, I was diagnosed with a incurable disease, which is Charcot-Marie Tooth disease, which is compounded by peripheral neuropathy. Now, I'm not a diabetic, but peripheral neuropathy, you lose your feeling in your feet and your hands. And the Charcot-Marie Tooth disease is you lose muscle mass in your hands and feet. And what would happen is on the bottom of my feet would become large ulcers, and they just wouldn't heal because you're constantly putting pressure on your feet. So they would have to cast them up, and then I have to go to work, or I have to be off work. And pretty soon they started doing surgeries. I had 30 surgeries in a 10-year period. And even though I didn't have any feeling in my feet, they continued to give me opioids. In other words, Percocet, right, Vicodin, Oxy for the pain. And I'm not blaming the doctors, because the doctors have an obligation to reduce the pain. But what I noticed for me is that it kind of evened out my panic attacks and anxiety attacks and PTSD. In other words, where I was starting to get a panic attack, if I took a couple pills, it would level it out. In other words, I was numbing my emotions. That's what I was doing. I was not letting myself feel those emotions in order to process them. I was just numbing them with the pills. And I think that's what we tend to do when we don't want to deal with things, either with alcohol, with pills. Some people use illegal substances to do that with. But in your mind, you're thinking, this is a legal pill, right? This is prescription. I'm not doing anything wrong. But the more you do it, the more and more pills you take. And I truly, after about 4 years of that, I really became addicted. And even though I was a working addict, I mean, I was a commander of a narcotic task force, and I was still doing my job, but I really wasn't fit for duty. But you see, police have this, I shouldn't say police, first responders have this warrior mentality where you don't admit defeat. You don't admit that there's anything wrong with you. And the culture is such that if I were to have gone to my supervisor and said, I need to see a psychologist, sure, they would have set me up with a psychologist, but the next thing they would have done is take my badge and gun away and put me off duty. And then once you're considered weak by your coworkers, you will never be trusted again. They will never accept you again. And I'm a big guy, and I was always part of that, tough guy mentality. And that's how we grew up. through the ranks.
Right. And it's
But
such a boys'
it's just
club
not
too.
healthy.
Yeah, definitely. So what landed you in prison, and how did you have this awakening?
Well, after my arrest, what I did is I actually ended up stealing some drugs out of evidence, and I got a 14-year prison sentence. While I was out on bail, God intervened in my life. It was just crazy. I was sitting home one night with my wife. I got this phone call, and the phone call was Jeff Kenney, who's a pastor of a church down here in the Bay Area near San Francisco. And he said, "Hey, I heard about what would happen, and I want to help. I want to invite you to my church. We have counseling." And to be honest, I didn't believe in God. I was more of agnostic, I think, where I just wasn't sure because of all the horrible things I've seen and witnessed. I really couldn't believe there was a true God that loved you when these horrible things happen, right? But I didn't know anything about God. Anyway, I kind of tried to blow him off a little bit. And he said, "Well, come to my church anytime, but can I pray for you?" So I said, "Sure." He prayed the sinner's prayer, and I didn't know at that time what the sinner's prayer is. And when he said, "Hey, do you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior?" I said, "Yeah." I really didn't understand what I was saying, but I just said, "Yeah." I think it was more to appease him. So we hung up. I went back and sat on the couch, and it was the strangest thing. It felt like a weight was off my shoulders. And my wife, she'd been grown up Christian, but she didn't express her views because I didn't believe, right? So we ended up going to church. It was a phenomenal experience. And just before that, I'm sorry, I got to backtrack, but before my arrest, the last straw was my daughter got these tumors on her liver, and she is a direct DNA match with me. And the doctors told us that she needed the surgery, that there was only be a 50% survival of the surgery. And that was kind of the last straw that really led me down. And I attempted suicide 2 times, and thank God, I think that God stopped it. But so when I'm out on bail and I'm going to church, I'm dealing with my daughter's illness too. She was 24 at the time. And one day the pastor just stopped on Sunday sermon. He just stopped and he had the whole congregation pray for my daughter for her healing. And about a week later, she went to a biopsy, and we did the biopsy. About 2 weeks later, we went to the doctor, and the doctor showed us the slides and everything. There were no tumors left. She had been healed. The doctor couldn't explain it. And that was the point right there where I believe God is there. He's a healing God. He's a loving God. And I was just on fire from there on out. So that's when I went to prison. And God has a plan. He sent me to Fort Worth, Texas. And that was so far away from home, from the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was really upset that I was so far away from my family. But in prison, they had a seminary. Tyndale Seminary came in and they did seminary classes. And so I got a job at the chapel. I started studying. I learned how God works and God's the biblical principles. And so I got my master's degree in theology and counseling. And then I went on and continued into a doctorate in Christian counseling. And that's when I learned how God heals, right? There's basic principles in the Bible of confession, repentance, and sanctification that leads to your healing. And once I started doing that, and I was working with another ex-LAPD officer who was had severe PTSD, and I was healed in about 4 or 5 months. And this entire time, these 3 years prior to that, I was going to psychologists, and there was no healing from. They showed me how to cope, and there is a place for psychologists, psychiatrists. I'm not saying there is no place for them, but there was no healing. They really taught me how to cope. And it was then in prison where I believe God healed me. I haven't had a PTSD symptom now in, I guess, 11 years.
Wow. Your story is so incredible, your testimony, and there's so many different directions we can go with this interview. But I know that you write that first responders are very susceptible to PTSD, and I can see why. And you're also saying that it's very common that they get addicted to drugs and alcohol just as a way to cope. So do you have any suggestions to mitigate the onset of PTSD? And maybe what are some of the signs and symptoms somebody could be dealing with it and maybe not realizing it?
Yeah, it really comes on quickly. I never realized I had it. I mean, I felt depressed and I felt all these symptoms, but I didn't put it all together. Because of the police academy, they only have like a 3-hour block on, good eating and exercise. But the biggest thing, by looking back now, the biggest thing that I see is that all first responders, they live, it's not a job, right? It's hard to explain. It's not a job. It's an identity, right? And once you lose that identity, either through an illness, possible firing or retirement, you're no longer a first responder. You're just a normal person. And that is devastating to law enforcement and first responders. My other mistake I made was I got rid of all my old friends. I used to race cars and I had a whole bunch of friends, and one by one, I just pushed them away because, one would maybe smoke marijuana, the other one got a DUI. And in police work, we're really black and white, right? Either you're a good guy or you're a bad guy. And even if you just, it's a faulty way of thinking. I'm going to admit that right now. But back then, if you had like sleeved up tattoos, you're a bad guy. If you had a DUI, you're a bad guy. So I slowly kicked away all my friends and was only hanging out with police officers. And that's really bad because I believe that outside friends outside the industry will keep you grounded, And then the third thing I learned that I think was a huge mistake that I hope other officers and first responders learn is that we need to be open and honest with our families. I mean, you don't have to go home and say, today was a bad day, honey. I saw this decapitated guy today. No. But I think that they're strong enough to deal with the things. So when I came home and how was you? Oh, it's all right, but it was like what the stuff I saw was horrific. But I just kept it inside. I think we need to trust our families to be a little bit more open and honest. And if you are feeling bad, talk to somebody. If it's not your family, it's a close friend. And if it can't be a close friend, somebody in the church. And if you don't go to church, go to a psychologist. It doesn't have to be through the police department. It could be on your own, because we need to let this out, right? We can't just keep holding this stuff in. And those are the three main things that I've learned by looking back to the mistakes that I made by not opening up to people.
Definitely. You also write in your book that it's important for first responders to have some sort of a faith as well. Like, does that help?
See, I believe it does, right? Because if you don't believe in a higher power, I'm going to call mine the Christian God. But if you don't believe in a higher power, there's no rhyme or reason to life, right? Life is just a series of incidents that happen. But if you truly believe that there is a higher power and there's a reason for things that happened, I believe that you can adjust to it and cope with it a little bit better, saying, okay, I understand that this happened. There's a reason for it. I don't know the reason. I'll probably never learn the reason. I don't know why I got this disease. I might never learn it, but when I'm in heaven, I truly believe that God will say, hey, I used this for this and this and this. God uses broken people. And I think that's a real important thing to understand, is that if you're going through a trial, belief in God will make that trial for a purpose, right? There's just no, why am I going through this? Or God, why me? Why me? And that's what I did a lot, was God, why me? Even though I wasn't a believer, I still said, God, why me? But now I see it, right? I look back and I see, okay, the pain that I went through, the poor decisions that I made, God allowed me to make, but it was a learning process, right? And now, having been there and done that, I can counsel people. I'm an addiction counselor right now, and I'm a chaplain. so I can help others because I've been there and done that. And I think that's why having a belief in a higher power is so important, because it makes sense of the things in life.
That's incredible. Your story is just amazing. Thanks so much for sharing it with us today, Norm.
Oh, thank you for allowing me to.
Norm Welsh is the author of Christ-Centered Healing of Trauma, Healing a Broken Heart. It was so great to have him on today. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.